Welcome in to the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Braden. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And hey, again, unfortunately, flying solo for this episode. Cousin Shane got a little situation going on at home, so keep him in your thoughts and prayers. He will be back at the end of the week to make some picks for these games. But hey, I know, don't turn off just yet, because we got one heck of a show. Preview some of the biggest matchups in the SEC. We got a lot of news items around the league as well. And I reached out to our old buddy Chris Marler, Saturday Down South, host of College Football Uncensored. This is the best interview he's ever done. He's been on the show a number of times. This is by far the best one. And I'll just tell you now, there's going to be many a fan base is happy. There's going to be many, quite frankly, pissed off at old Marler. So we'll get to that in just a second. I just want to give a shout out, man. We've got, not only are our numbers continuing to rise, I want to thank the audience. Best month we've ever had, best year we've ever had. Numbers are just going through the roof, but it's not just us. It's you guys. It's all you guys. It's the SEC fans. And I just pulled this stat. This is something I tweeted, and I figured SEC fans would appreciate these numbers, but I didn't think they'd appreciate them quite as much as they have already. But there's 10 SEC programs right now that have averaged at least 96% capacity after the first month of the season. There's only 4, obviously, that have not. Ole Miss, which is at 93, you're right there at that threshold. Mississippi State, 85% capacity. Missouri, 81, and Vanderbilt, 55. Those are the only 4. So if I didn't mention you there, you've got at least 96% capacity after the first month. And shout out to Florida fans, Georgia fans, South Carolina fans. Those 3, 100% attendance. And a couple of these, I think Florida's at like 101. I don't even know how that's possible. But these numbers are sent to me from the SEC. So these are verified numbers. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, the only 3, again, with 100% capacity. Just shout out to those amazing fans here in the SEC, and particularly at Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. And hell, the rest of the SEC are right there. There's nothing wrong with 97, 98% capacity, which is where the majority of the league is. That is just outstanding. Now, speaking of South Carolina, if you missed the news, I'm sure if you're a Gamecock fan, you didn't. But the rest of the SEC, hey, we're going to have extra football Thursday night. Ooh, Thursday night football in the SEC. Love it. South Carolina hosting South Carolina State. That was moved up due to the hurricane. So concerns there that it may hit in South Carolina, I guess around Saturday, Sunday. So Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central on SEC Network. We're going to have some football, ladies and gentlemen. And, a little aside, I think South Carolina fans fired up to go to the game on Saturday. I realize this is going to mess with a lot of people's plans, but, it is what it is, Mother Nature and all, but could be a competitive advantage. Extra week of prep and a couple days extra recovery to prepare for the upcoming trip to Kentucky. Something to think about. It's going to be a night game. It's going to be a rowdy environment in Kentucky playing Ole Miss. We'll get to that game in just a minute, but who knows? If Kentucky loses, big if, but if they lose, maybe they're limping into this game. Maybe some flaws get exposed by Ole Miss. I don't know. I'm just saying, South Carolina, if you're looking for silver linings here, I think that's a good one. I think you're getting a little bit of an advantage moving to South Carolina. You got to take care of business, obviously, in Williams-Brice Thursday night against South Carolina State, but plenty of the starters should be getting rested in the second half. And that's not the only one. Florida versus Eastern Washington was moved also because of the hurricane concerns to Sunday, October 2nd, still at noon Eastern, 11 o'clock Central, and the game's on ESPN and SEC Network Plus, which means, kind of the opposite for the Gators. Shorter week next week for Missouri. Now, that's a home game in Gainesville, though, so you are messing with next week's schedule. That's something to consider. But again, starters should be resting for the majority of the second half against Eastern Washington. But Man, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, SEC football. Couldn't be happier over here. But all right, hey, before we get to these previews, we're not going to preview every game, but we're going to preview the big games on this episode, save some of the others for the next one. But we have got just a really outstanding interview. Chris Marler, this is the best. I'm not overselling it. I mean, he was on a heater. He hit me up after we even recorded this, and even he acknowledged, I mean, this was a terrific interview, and I'll just say this. I mean, we use profanities on this show when it's warranted, but Chris was letting them fly as like a sailor here. As Cosmo Kramer would say, he let the expletives fly. So just a little note. We're playing this uncensored. College Football Uncensored, his show, and clearly old Uncle Chris, he was uncensored for this one.
You better not be fucking recording this, dude.
I am.
Why can't I hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Hold on.
Let's see.
I look good today. This is nice.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
I can. What's up, you creep? Huh?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Are you eating on the show?
Well, not anymore. We're just all out of popcorn.
From what I've been hearing, these Georgia fans are pretty obnoxious, so I wouldn't mind them.
They are the fucking worst. It is crazy how bad they are. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to it. I gotta get some lunch, man. I'm starving.
Okay, well, let me give you a little intro here.
Yeah.
All right, we're pleased to be joined once again by friend of the show, Chris Marler. You know him, Saturday Down South, College Football Uncensored, one of the best, not only on the Twitter space, but in the podcast space. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I say this every time when I come on here. I'm just so happy for you and all the success you guys are having. I mean, you personally, not Tennessee. But no, you and cousin Shane, you're just killing it. And it's so good to see. I love that Friday Night Lights thing you guys got going on. It's everything's been great, man. So it's good to be back.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in here and spending some time with us. And, right off the bat, I want to ask you, how worried are you that, you're going to be able to live with yourself after Alabama loses a game before Tennessee, because them Razorbacks are going to get a win this weekend?
I mean, here's the thing though. You don't want that. You don't want that if you're a Tennessee fan. And hear me out here. Like I said this last week. I was like talking about on the podcast, not SDS. I was talking about on the College Football Uncensored podcast. I'm going to be very clear about that. But no, I like we were talking about this, and I was like, man, if you're a Bama fan and you're watching this Arkansas A&M game, what you really want is like, you want this to be just like a hard-fought, physical game that goes down to the wire, and hopefully they lose in dramatic fashion. And I mean, check off the fucking boxes, because every single one of those things happen. Excuse my language. But like, all those things happen, and you look at it now, it's like, so now Arkansas's got to get back up emotionally, which their fans do an incredible job of. Arkansas fans are the best in the country, in my opinion, at getting back up. I've never had any issues with them really online, except for the one time I made a Traylon Burks comment about the game last year that you saw firsthand. They're so used to this at this point that it's like this is gonna sound fucked up, but like it's like a kid from a broken home. It's like the get back that Arkansas fans have is really good, because it's like they've been disappointed so much before. All of this does not sound like a compliment, and I hate myself for saying it, especially the broken home reference. But no, I think that they are not going to win this weekend. But if you're a Bama fan flipping the script here, you definitely I don't think you win all three of these next three games. I don't. I think you could lose all three. I don't think they will lose all three, but I think 2-1 is good. And this is the one you want to lose. Like, if you're a Tennessee fan, you better hope that they don't lose this weekend. Because if they do what they do when they always lose, which is go on the revenge tour after that, then like that's you want to get them where they're coming in high off that Arkansas A&M win.
Are you buying, the narrative all week? Alabama struggles on the road. I mean, it seems like whenever we have a narrative about Alabama, then they come out and they say, well, hell, let's go win by 50 on the road to just shut that down real quick. Or are you concerned? Because it's going to be a madhouse there in Razorback Stadium, night game. Which way are you leaning on that?
So, no, I do think it's a very real thing that Bama has struggled on the road. You look at even the Cincinnati game last year, which is a neutral site game. They obviously didn't struggle in Atlanta before that. But Bryce has his fewest passing yards he's had in like all season. I think he had like 181 passing yards something in that game. You struggle at Auburn. They did not struggle at Mississippi State, which was it's something I think with that defense that Pete Golding has done really well against an air raid. I don't know if it's just like that's where his niche is. But you struggle at Florida badly. Where are the other road games, Mike? I'm trying to think because it seemed like they struggled every single game. Like LSU was a home game, Arkansas was a home game. They struggled
Auburn
with those a
is
little
one
bit.
that comes to mind.
Auburn was tough, which I mentioned that one, but like I do think it's a very real thing that Bama does struggle on the road. You saw it against Texas. Now, and let's also say this. I'm still of the belief that Texas is a good football team. I don't give a shit that they lost by 3 points. They lost by 4 points in 2 games without their starting quarterback. Okay, so I think that going on the road to Texas and getting a 1 point win is still a good win. But if you're going and talking about a year ago when you barely beat a Florida team that barely, they won like 6 games and you beat them by 2 points and probably should have lost there. You beat an Auburn team that won 6 games, probably should have lost there. I think being on the road is a very, very real detriment to this team. And it's something we haven't seen under Saban in a long time, but it's a real thing now.
Now, obviously, the Arkansas secondary down some guys. They've been playing horribly. Mm-hmm. It's a nightmare matchup going against Bryce Young, but Arkansas can get after you. I mean, I believe they still lead the SEC in sacks. Is that a concern for you with this Alabama offensive line, giving up pressures? Even in that Texas game, he's getting harassed.
Yeah, he did all game. He had like 60 yards, I think, in the first half. I think they only had 70 yards total or something weird like that in the first half. Yeah, I'm worried about it because I think if you look at like even a year ago where it's like, you look at that LSU game and then they go zero, like cover zero and just blitz nonstop. And you're like, oh man, well, like I'm sure that's just an anomaly, right? Like surely Bama's not gonna be held to 6 yards rushing or anything like that. And they haven't, thank God, since then. But I mean, we've seen this before where it's like, you just bring the house. Auburn has 7 sacks against you. Georgia had like 5 or 6, I want to say, in the national championship game. I think it's an issue. I also think that last week is the first week we finally saw that receiving core kind of gain some confidence. And it kind of takes a while to gel sometimes. It takes a while, not just in practice, but like in a game situation. Like I played D2 baseball, as I've told you before, and we could talk about it all day long because of how just incredible accomplishing of a baseball player I was. I'm saying that all in jest, but I'm saying like there's a difference in practice and then going out under the lights. There's a big difference in practice and going out in front of 100,000 people and making sure you're reeling in some of these catches that you made on the sidelines or in the end zone of the practice field. I think that Bama will be better, but I do think that I do think that Arkansas has a lot of things that they could throw at Bama that is going to give them some issues. Because here's the thing, last year they won by 7 points. I still believe that game wasn't as close as people think because you had the fake field goal, onside kick, all that kind of stuff. I think that this year Arkansas is built to stay in this game with Bama more so than they were last year. I don't know if they will or not, but that's what I think they are built like.
Yeah, and their backs are now against the wall. They really, you may think it's a pipe dream that they think they can win the West, but hell, they knock off Alabama. They're right there because A&M may drop another game. But how surprised were you at the spread? I don't know if it's still 17. It opened at 17. Does that make you nervous at all?
No, I think Bama wins by 14 plus points, to be honest. I really do. I think this team is we look at it. What we tend to do with Alabama is judge them against themselves, and we judge them at their worst. And what I mean by that is like last year, or we do the opposite, which is we judge them at their best, right? But we don't have the situation this year because they've only played Louisiana Monroe, which is a huge game, huge win, as you know. Bama's 500 in that series in the past 15 years. Utah State, who's garbage, and then Vandy last week, who I think is better than people. I think Vandy's the 5th best team in the East. I that might sound crazy, but I think they're better than South Carolina and Mizzou. But anyway, so I think that winning by 40. Why are you laughing?
I'm just thinking of all the people just unsubscribed right now, but thank you.
No, unsubscribe to me. Don't subscribe to Mike. Don't punish him for me being right. I've been right all year. But like, no, and you look at like this team going up against like what Arkansas does well, which is running the football. Have at it, Hoss. I mean, enjoy trying to do that against that front seven. I think that there's ways that they can win, but I think the only way they win is if KJ Jefferson has something, which he's done a lot, which is a 3+ touchdown, 0 turnover game, and you got to force a couple turnovers if you're Arkansas, which I don't think they're going to do in that secondary. I'm interested to see if Bama gets on the road in this environment against an offense that probably does. I know it sounds weird because of what happened a week ago, but kind of knows how to finish better than Texas does. I think Arkansas would be able to put them away. I just don't think it gets to that point. I just think that this defense has shut out opponents in 10 of 16 quarters this year. They're top 10 in the country in yards per attempt, yards per play in offense and defense. It's the only school in the fucking country where they could be top 10 in both those categories and fans want both the coordinators fired. It makes no sense at all. It's so stupid. And I tell you, the other thing too is Jace McClellan is a pretty damn good running back. I think he might be better than Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's bold.
Yeah.
But we got the only undefeated showdown we got here, Kentucky at Ole Miss. You got any way you're leaning going into that big matchup?
Ole Miss, man. Kentucky's, I'm going to say it. Kentucky kind of sucks. I know that they're ranked 7th in the country, but yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, if all these fans want to get upset about it, Kentucky kind of sucks. Like, you guys look like shit in the first half of games, and congrats on being able to close against Miami of Ohio, because Vanderbilt did the same thing a week ago, and they did it more impressively because they were down by 14 points. And not Miami of Ohio, I'm sorry. Didn't they play Northern Illinois this weekend?
Yeah, and it was a 7-point game, and they didn't have their quarterback either.
Right. So Vandy was down by them, down 10 to them a week before, and they came back and won by 14. Vandy had a more impressive game against that same team than y'all did a week ago. Kentucky is going to be good, but this is what I said all offseason. It was like, I don't see how you replace 3 generational type players with like the 2 offensive linemen that got drafted. Then you talk about with the receiver who I'm drawing a blank on now. Help me out here. It was a fantastic name. Why can't I think of the name? The receiver that went to the NFL last year. Like he's the best receiver they've had since Craig East.
Wandale Robinson.
He was fantastic. And I think that you got the kid from Virginia Tech, Tavion Robinson's had a pretty good start or he had a pretty good game last week. Not a great start to the year. Kavasi spoke. I know you get Chris Rodriguez back, but you've been outrushed in 3 of your 4 games. Like that is the offense, right? It's like Will Levis can only do so much before Will Levis is gonna Will Levis. Like he is going to turn the ball over. He is going to shut down in big moments, in my opinion. And I understand, like you could sit here and go fucking yell at the wall if you're a Kentucky fan upset about this, because Will Levis is like he led the SEC in interceptions a year ago. He had 4 in his first 3 games this year. You haven't played anybody and besides Florida, and that game was handed to you on a silver platter. So why do you think you're the 7th best team in the country? Because you're not.
How about A&M Mississippi State? This is a tough game to read in Starkville.
Yeah, Vegas knows something, right? I hated it. I hate this line. It opened up at 1.5 Mississippi State. I apologize to Kentucky fans for all the vitriol. That was tough. But I still mean what I said. So no, Mississippi State and A&M. I remember I was drunk as shit last year at the LSU Auburn game, just having a blast, and it was just celebrating a divorce. And I remember getting there, and I'm just like, I remember looking at the screen and I was like, why is A&M losing to Mississippi State? I must be drunk as shit. I can't read I'm reading the damn things wrong. And it was right. Mississippi State beat them in College Station, which is a tough thing to do for some teams. Looking at you, Bama. But no, I think that going to Starkville, you like A&M obviously has like the better talent, right? The better roster. I do think Mississippi State is a better team than we give him credit for, because it's not just Will Rogers. Like he doesn't get enough credit in general as a quarterback, but that defense, Zach Arnett's defense, does a really good job. They have scored, I think, in 15 of 16 quarters this season. The only one they didn't was the 4th quarter against LSU. I think that they're going. That's why that's scary if you're A&M, is because that's not what A&M's offense does. Like we saw them come from behind a week ago, but if you're talking about an offense that just keeps putting it on you, like Mississippi State should be able to do. I don't know if A&M is going to be able to hang with them, but 3.5 points, that hook. I mean, and it's gone up. People have bought up the line, which is kind of crazy. So,
does Auburn have any hope at all against LSU this weekend? It was a crazy series.
It's the worst movie you ever seen in your life last week. It's like, what it reminded me of was like, you ever watch Mighty Ducks 2 as an adult? Probably not, because you're a better adult than me. But if you watch Mighty Ducks 2 as an adult, if you like really think about that movie, okay,
was that the one where they were like Olympians?
They just sprinkled in like affirmative action into the movie, and that's what became. It was like, okay, hold on, this is the worst this is the worst rec league hockey team in Minnesota, in their county or what the fuck ever. And then they were like, but this is an incredible story. And we found this Hispanic kid who's super fast, which is messed up. And then you had this Asian figure skater and a female goalie, and then a black kid you found in Compton. You found the black kid in Compton. And that's not even the most unbelievable part. The most unbelievable part was when they were in Compton and they hit that knuckle puck over the fence and it broke that guy's windshield. That guy was like, hey, it's all good, bro. I'm going to the gym. Don't worry about it. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie. It's fantastic. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I say all that because the ending of that movie was so stupid. And if you think about it, because like in hockey, you know when the puck goes into the net. And at the end of that movie, they're holding the glove and he flips up the puck in his glove and it's like, oh, and everyone's on the edge of their seat. That's how dumb that ending was a week ago at Auburn. I mean, my God, the theater was incredible. I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. But it was. I don't. LSU, I think, is a much better football team than people think. I saw a stat the other day on Twitter, so you know it's real, and it said that LSU's defense ranks 12th in the country, right behind Georgia's, who's 11th. It also ranks like 20th or something like that in offense, which is right behind Ole Miss or something like that. This is a pretty good football team. I mean, Jaden Daniels has 3 games this year of 300 plus total yards and 0 interceptions, and they have done a good job. It like all the stuff we thought we were going to see with LSU with Brian Kelly and a more structured and organized professional approach like to coaching has all happened. And I think the biggest thing is that this team now, when you look at it like 3 weeks ago, fucking sky is falling. They lost to Florida State, and Florida State sucks. And now you look at Florida State and they're 4-0. And you lost to them by 1 point on a neutral site, even though it's in New Orleans. I think LSU's a lot better than people think. So no, I don't give Auburn a chance unless Jesus shows up again, which for my mom, who Pastor Patty Sue has always told me he only shows up like once every 2,000 years.
So how soon after this game, Brian Harsin fired, and more importantly, because everybody's, they basically know it's already over and done with. Who do you want hired at Auburn? And maybe not even for the best of their football program, but just for entertainment value for you and I. I mean, we got candidates like Hugh Freeze, Deion Sanders, Lane Kiffin, any of those, or maybe there's a wild card.
I don't think Kiffin leaves Ole Miss to go to Auburn. There's so much instability at Auburn. And I think that, and this is going to shock some people, I think Lane Kiffin isn't toxic enough to go to Auburn, which is something I never thought I would say. I never thought I would say that. But I will also say that like the 2 candidates that I really wish that Georgia Tech would go after down the street from me here in Atlanta. And that's Deion Sanders and that's Hugh Freeze. I was talking to Terrence Mathis about this. We have a TV show we do together here on Saturday mornings in Atlanta. And he's a former Falcon. Just one of my favorite receivers growing up anyway. And we were talking about this, and he's like, I think people are going to laugh at this. He told me this a year ago, right? He was like, I think Georgia Tech needs to go after Deion Sanders. And I was like, that doesn't sound crazy at all. I don't think that Georgia Tech will go after either of those. I think that Auburn, they laughed about this for so long. No, we don't need to go after Deion. We don't need to go after Hugh Freeze. If you're a Bama fan, the name that scares you is Hugh Freeze. And the other name that probably should scare you is Deion Sanders, because I understand he's been at Jackson State, but he's done a really good job of coaching. I think that he has taken this a lot more serious than we have taken him, if that makes sense. And I think he's a really, really good potential candidate, because especially from what you've lacked in Brian Harsin, from like recruiting standpoint, and from what you're looking at in terms of like, hey man, understands the culture of this region in the country. Go get him. Like, and now Hugh Freeze also fits it well because he has that fake Christian bullshit, and excuse my language, but like he does all that kind of shit, and also is talking about how he wants to, he's like in people's DMs and shit. That might be what keeps him from the job, but I don't know.
All right, final thing for you, Chris. Really appreciate the time. How bad are you going to cry when Tennessee beats Alabama this year?
It's going to be the worst, Mike. I've known you for 5 years, and I've hated most of our interactions on that game day, because it's like you're one of my good friends, and I love you to death, man. And I really do. I think the world of everything you've been able to accomplish, and I'm happy for it. But that's not what I want you to accomplish. I don't want to see you smiling like you're smiling right now on that Saturday. And I have a bad feeling you might be. I really do, because I think this team is like, listen, I put this out there on Sunday. I did my top 10, and it's the one that people need to pay attention to because it's most important, like Danny Cannell said. No, but I had Tennessee 4th in the country. And I think if you look at what they've done so far, that I don't know how you can't talk me out of it, right? Like, I mean, you can't. I think they're the fourth best team in the country right now. At home, that like rocks of a crowd. And I'll tell you what, if you guys go to LSU and lose, it's a little bit different. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, my God.
Look at you, all white Mike like that. Look at this.
Tennessee, number 4. Kentucky sucks. You just gained yourself 10,000 volunteer followers. Tell them where to find you, Chris, and all the outstanding work you're doing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's always good to come back on here. We'll get you back on our podcast too, which is, again, the College Football Uncensored podcast. If you love college football and you hate the bleep button, you will love the podcast. It's a lot of fun. We have a great time on there. Me and my co-host Tyler Huck. On social media, at Vern Funquist. I know. I'll give you a second to take that in. It's the best name you're going to hear on Twitter, besides that one girl who has Curvy Smart. That's really good. But yeah, Vern Funquist on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll see you then.
All right. So, hey, just again, a terrific interview there with Marler. Really appreciate it. He's lifting up the show, giving us an entertainment factor that we're missing without Cousin Shane. I hope you guys appreciated that outstanding stuff there from Marler. But hey, let's get into these previews, man. So many great games this weekend, and I don't think enough attention is being paid to Kentucky at Ole Miss. Got to start there. Battle of unbeatens, 4-0 versus 4-0. And a great little nugget here from, I believe this was Neil McCready. He's going to be on the next episode of the show, at least scheduled to be at this point in time. Since Kentucky and Ole Miss, they faced off each other, if you remember. I'm sure those fans do, in 2020, the COVID season. Since that season, the 21 season, looking ahead, 18-3 for both Kentucky and Ole Miss, behind only Alabama and Georgia. That's incredible. And that just speaks to the outstanding job Lane Kiffin and Mark Stoops have done with their respective programs. Now they're going to go head-to-head in an epic showdown here in Oxford. So I pulled some stats here, pretty interesting. Kentucky offense versus Ole Miss defense. I got to be honest with you. After looking at these numbers, talking to Marler, talking to some others, I was leaning heavily towards Kentucky. But just look at some of these stats. And I know this doesn't mean everything, but the spread favors Ole Miss. The analytics favor Ole Miss. And how about this? Kentucky offense, number 10 in the SEC in scoring, 13 in rushing, number 10 in touchdowns scored, number 14 in sacks allowed. While you flip it over to Ole Miss defense, number 3 in scoring, number 4 pass efficiency, number 3 in touchdowns allowed, number 2 in turnovers forced, and number 2 in sacks. All those heavily favor Ole Miss, not by a small margin or by any means, but of course Ole Miss is, Shane asked the question, and it's valid at this point in time. Are the Rebels fool's gold? We'll find out certainly on Saturday, but let's focus on Kentucky first of all. J.J. Weaver doesn't sound like he's going to play according to Mark Stoops. That's a blow to this Kentucky defense. Of course, the good news, Chris Rodriguez back in the action, arguably the best SEC in the conference. He should help these numbers immediately. He should help the Kentucky play action game. I mean, he's going to help in a number of ways. So that's big news. That's something Mark Stoops going to talk about here in just a second. But I hate to sound like a broken record, but we got to get this offensive line figured out. And it's not just running the ball, it's protection. Ole Miss is going to come after you. They're not going to let Will Levis sit back and pick you apart, because hell, even Tulsa, again, they had over 100 yards passing in the first quarter last weekend. Their quarterback went down. Otherwise, maybe they win that ball game. So this could be a back and forth showdown. Very interesting to see how it plays out. But let's kick it over to Mark Stoops real quick on Chris Rodriguez back in the lineup and on his team really failing to play complimentary football so far this season.
Back this week. What has been your teaching point with him, and how has he responded?
Well, for Chris, it was just a matter of managing him, while he was out, just getting him the reps that we needed to. The last week or two, as I mentioned last week, he was getting reps with the first and second team, mainly the second team, or just different quarterbacks, just to make sure he wasn't totally removed from practicing our plays, along with staying in shape, being on the scout team, doing whatever was necessary, staying in good shape. And for Chris, he just needs to be himself. He doesn't need to come in and be our savior or anything like that, or save our run game, as any of that. We don't need him to worry about that. We just need him to be him, and we need the people around him, the other guys that are playing, to do their job in the strain and to do things better in certain moments.
Marcus, you spoke of playing complimentary football. How frustrating is it that that's not happening right now?
Well, I mean, it's why we work. It's why we do things. There's very few teams out there. You could ask, whoever's 1, 2, 3, anybody. You're gonna ask any coach right now, and there's gonna be parts of their team that they want to work on. We're not any different. We want to continue to work and grind and get better.
Now, one other thing I really wanted to note here, we'll get to this. He's got more comments here, but Kentucky is obviously in the top 10. Fans are thrilled, but it's wild to sit here and think. You go back to that stat, 18-3 since 21, third best record in the SEC. There's no parades being thrown in Lexington. They're not puffing their chest. They don't really care. We're in the top 10. That's great. They don't even, it's just normal to them. And I know it's only been a month into the season. Let's not crown them yet or anything. They've only played one conference game or anything. But I think you need to take a moment and recognize just the turnaround that's been done by Mark Stoops and company. I know it's been said time and time again, but here we are sitting in the top 10, and they cannot give a damn. They expect to be up there, which is just wild to say. And hell, they are there. They keep winning. They're going to remain there. And they're, if they win this ball game, I mean, I think not that they'll run the table, but Georgia, Tennessee, those may be the only two teams that'll test them if Ole Miss doesn't here on Saturday. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Kentucky could be living in the top 10 all season long. Let's kick it over to Mark Stoops one more time. Asked about getting the recognition and all that for his program. And he really, I thought, had something interesting to say with Jackson Dart. Ole Miss, not truly efficient in the passing game at this point in time because they've been so great running the ball. But even Mark Stoops is well aware Lane Kiffin's got some stuff in his back pocket. He says they're sitting on explosive things that they've been setting up all season. So it's interesting that he's putting that out there. He's well aware. But what those are, we're going to find out here on Saturday.
AP poll: Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, USC, Kentucky. How does that hit you? And more importantly, how do you think your team will respond to something like that?
Well, I mean, I like it there. I'd like it to stay there. That's really what's most important. Sure. I mean, it helps with, I think, as I mentioned, the fan base and showing up and having the people there. It helps in recruiting. It helps, with your team. And hopefully it motivates them to practice hard to stay that way, because we know we have a very tough stretch coming up starting here this week. So, our team is mature enough. Certainly there's some young guys that need to still be taught quite a bit. But the leadership of this team knows that that's fine. But it's really about how we practice and how we prepare and getting ready for a really good team and another tough challenge.
I think we're relying a lot on the running game. What have you seen from Jackson Dart? He was finally officially named our starter at quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's a really good player. He's getting better with every rep. He's explosive. He's making good decisions. There's been games this year where, much like our offense, they've stopped themselves. And I'm sure they're sitting there saying, who stopped us? We stopped ourselves. Bad snap, bad, communication, just certain things. But you can see when they're clicking and in a rhythm. He's very talented. He can run, makes good decisions, could throw it. And like I said, they're sitting on a lot of explosives that they're setting up, and they can do a lot of different things.
All right, so flipping over to the other side, Ole Miss. It's interesting. Kiffin, not necessarily taking shots, but he seems a little disturbed by the lack of attendance down there in Oxford. I know Tulsa's not a great game. It was hot, is what I heard. I mean, it's hot across the SEC. And we just went through the stats. I mean, of all the teams that are showing out, of all the fan bases that are showing out in incredible numbers, you think Ole Miss would be there. Longest active home streak since the 40s, he said on Saturday. They're striping out Vaught Hemingway for this game. I mean, this should be some great atmosphere, but some interesting comments here. Kiffin, he called, in a roundabout way, he called the fan base out. Says it looked like a damn high school game in the second half. Everybody left, and how he's really having to coach up the players on being locked in, despite the fact that, the attendance isn't what it should be. It shouldn't be an issue for this game, but it's just very fascinating that Kiffin would throw this out there.
You talked about it all last week and even after the game, and it's kind of become a topic of discussion heading into the SEC opener and all these SEC games coming up. Just how important is fan support for games like this coming up with a top 10 team?
Yeah, again, we utilize any situation to teach our players, and so talk to them again, which we have before, about, hey, regardless of what you come out to before the game or halftime, when you come back out and you run out the tunnel and it looks like, a high school game playing in a college stadium, you can't let that affect you. I mean, there's psychology to that, obviously. There's a home field advantage for a reason. And, when it goes the other way, and you kind of have that feeling, that, man, are we still really playing in a game here? The players have to fight that. So, again, we use that as a learning lesson for our guys. So, if that's the case, that's the case. But, I mean, I'm worried about what I can control. I've tried social media in here for 2 years, so we'll worry about what we can control, and that's getting our players ready to play.
Cue the rest of the SEC social media accounts. I mean, you got to imagine they're cutting that up and sending it out to recruits. Very, very interesting. But more importantly for this game, give the fans something to be excited about. Can't have, much like Kentucky, inconsistent performances. One half you look great. The second half, you don't. And this has happened multiple times. Now, maybe it's just because you're beating the hell out of people. Maybe it's because you got the game well in hand. But go back and watch that Tulsa game. That was not a totally in-hand game. I never truly felt like Tulsa was going to win that ball game, but it was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. Ole Miss closed the thing out, but Tulsa had their opportunity. So this is far from a flawless team. I'm not going down the road of saying fool's gold. Again, we'll find out on Saturday. It certainly seems like there's obviously been some big upsets this season. And there's been, 1 week your team looks terrible, and then the next they look incredible. Look at Florida last week. I mean, South Florida maybe should have lost that ball game. Tennessee maybe should have won it. I mean, this is, I think, going to be a season-long thing all across football. I mean, look at LSU, how they started out. Now they look like maybe the most improved team from week 1 to week 4 in the SEC. Georgia beats the hell out of South Carolina. Kent State kind of plays with you. I mean, this is across the board. Alabama struggled against Texas. Just blew the doors off Vanderbilt. I mean, week in and week out, you just don't know what you're going to get. But, and in part for the Ole Miss Rebels, maybe that's because Jackson Dart, they don't know what they're getting from him. Still a very young, very inexperienced quarterback. Lane Kiffin talks about Dart's growth and provides an update here on Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley. They're going to need those guys against Kentucky because Ole Miss, part of the reason they've been so effective on the ground, they can rotate guys in and out, and there's no drop-off. And there's very few programs in the SEC that can say that, particularly as well as Ole Miss this season.
You've been pretty complimentary of Jackson this fall, except for a couple of decision-making. Just where is he right now compared to where you wanted him to be, and what are the things that you kind of need to see more from him in SEC play?
Well, I really like that we didn't have the one disaster play, and so that's growth, because he had that in the previous games where there's one significant play you want to take back, especially the 2 interceptions. So, that was really good to see. Managed the game well at the end, a situation of staying in bounds in the game. And, like I kind of said before, we have such high standards, and myself kind of with that position that sometimes forget how young they are and inexperienced. And, you know, even this morning watching this Kentucky game from 2 years ago, that would be Matt's second game with us, you know, and even though he's played for a while, but with us it's his second game, and you see him make really good plays, but you see him miss some throws, miss some reads in the game, which didn't happen as much last year. So, you know, it's a reminder that, you know, there's a reason experience is important.
What are your expectations this week, availability-wise, for Zach and Ulysses, just kind of getting them back?
Yeah, I would hope they go, and that's when we're at our best, when all three are there, and there's some special teams roles that, you know, are involved with that position group too that are important.
All right, another mega showdown we got here in the SEC. This time, West opponents, Alabama on the road at Arkansas. Night game. Nick Saban 15-0 against Arkansas during his time at Alabama. Of course, last season, Alabama won 42-35 in Bryant-Denny. This season, much different story when it comes to the environment that the Crimson Tide are walking into. It's going to be a buzzsaw down there in Arkansas against a Razorback team fighting for their lives, backs against the wall after a disappointing performance. Sam Pittman saying all the right things, but, you know, we don't really know how Arkansas will respond till we see them on Saturday. If they face some adversity, and by God, they're probably going to face some adversity. The key is you don't want it to be early. You don't want, there's been many a time in this series, of course, you know, it's been lopsided for a long time until they get things going here. There's not been many of these that have been competitive, but Alabama has been able to just kind of rip Arkansas's heart out early. When I think of games in this series, paramount that Arkansas keeps this game competitive in the second half, and we'll get to Sam Pittman's comments here in a moment. Carry that fight into the second half. They've had real issues playing in the third quarter. You could play outstanding for 3 quarters. You fail to show up for a single quarter, Alabama will slice and dice and kill you. Just look at these numbers. Alabama's defense, SEC rankings here. Number 1 scoring, number 1 pass efficiency, number 1 in rushing yards allowed. They have not allowed a passing touchdown yet and have only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, I know you look at their opponents, you know, Utah State, Texas, Vanderbilt, some other scrub, ULM, I think it was. So I get it. Skewed, possibly. They've not faced an offense near the caliber of Arkansas, but this is a unit that is playing the best football they've played in years there for Nick Saban. They're confident coming into this ball game. KJ Jefferson has got to make plays that have not been made against this Arkansas defense. He's got the weapons to do it. Arkansas offense, number 8 in the SEC in scoring. Again, I think you could kind of flip it to what I'm saying about Alabama. I think I'm not sitting here saying Arkansas is the number 8 offense in the SEC. That's just where their scoring is. But I think that's a factor of playing A&M, South Carolina, Cincinnati, and then even the Missouri State game tested you. I don't think anyone's had a tougher go of it so far in the SEC. But how about this? Despite having said that, Arkansas number 2 in pass efficiency, number 2 in rushing, and only 5 turnovers. Cannot turn the ball over, cannot stress that enough. You have 1 turnover in this ball game, you better force 2. I mean, that because Alabama will kill you on that. Key to the game, Arkansas's got to get after Bryce Young. 20 sacks, number 1 in the SEC. Like any quarterback, you'd imagine. I'm looking here at the numbers for Bryce Young when he's under pressure. I mean, his numbers dip by about half. So, I mean, it goes without saying, quarterbacks not as good when they're getting pressured, when they're getting rattled, when they're getting hit. That's the key to Arkansas. You cannot sit back here and let Bryce Young pick you apart because he'll do it all day long. But I thought this was an interesting question Sam Pittman had in his presser here. KJ Jefferson, is he trying to do too much? Because that's a little bit of a worry too. But you don't want him jumping in from the 5, of course, but you need him to be kind of Superman because he's going up against Bryce Young, one of the best players, if not the best player in the country. He's going to have to match him score for score to keep Arkansas in this ball game. Let's kick it over to Sam Pittman on KJ Jefferson. Maybe pushing things a little, trying to do a little too much maybe. Thoughts on Bryce Young and Arkansas struggles coming out of halftime. I thought this was pretty interesting. They're at least addressing it. We'll see if it works on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. With that, KJ is carried. I mean, he's been a great quarterback for you for 2 years.
Yeah.
Is he at times, though, trying to maybe do too much this year?
I don't think so. I think his ball security hasn't been as good as what it was. We're a year ago carrying it, and I think he just gets caught up in the moment. If you look back at Ole Miss last year, he dove over those three guys and extended the ball and all that kind of stuff, and it was, I think he is trying to win the game, and probably that's about it, to be honest with you. Well,
Sam, it looks like Bryce Young's maybe running the ball a little bit more, and you mentioned you might be even better than last year. What are you seeing from him? What really impresses you about him?
A lot of confidence in everything he does, whether he's throwing, whether he's scrambling. He'll stay in the pocket till the last second. When he gets outside the pocket, he just looks comfortable. Like, I could run it for a touchdown. I can throw it for a touchdown. I'm just going to do kind of whichever one I decide to do. And he's been so hard to tackle for the teams that he's been playing. Texas is the only team really that put much pressure on them at all, and they did pressure him well. But I just think he's playing with the extreme amount of confidence, and he's obviously been a good player for probably since he was in sixth grade or whatever, but very, 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 very confident. Got a lot of players around him. Got some really good backs.
And also, I was looking at some stats here. You've outscored opponents in every quarter except for the third. You've been outscored 41-13. You have any idea what's going on there? Or can you put your finger on anything?
No. I mean, I wish I did. We're going to change up. I mean, we're going to have halftime at practice this week. We're just going to stop, and then we're going to come back and go good on good right when we come off of halftime. And we're going to change the way we stretch coming out of the half, and we got to change something. And you know what we're trying to do? We're trying to put it in our mind that we got to get going. We couldn't get out of our funk Saturday. I mean, we're still up. While the offense, I met with the staff, and then while they were meeting, trying to adjust, I was in the locker room talking to our kids because you could feel that we were behind by 30, and we were up, and you could feel it. And so I went in and started talking to them about, what we have to do, and made them aware that we haven't started fast in the third quarter and things of that nature. And it was just blah, for a few minutes on the clock, maybe the entire third quarter. And it's been that way the entire year. You always worry about starting fast in the game, and we've been okay with that. It's the second half where I think every game this year we've been ahead, or we were behind at Missouri State, but we've been worse. They've either been closer to us or we've been worse behind in the third quarter of every game. And we have opportunities to put people away, and just haven't been able to do it. So it's on our mind. We're going to change a few things up at practice to see if we can emphasize a little bit better.
Now, on the flip side, hey, I talked a lot about Alabama's defense there, and I don't want to say they're lacking by any means, but we're a month into the season, and Saban says we're still trying to find our identity on offense. And that's not exactly what you want to hear, especially when you're returning the Heisman-winning quarterback. But with the new running backs, new receivers, reshuffled offensive line, maybe that's just what you're going to get. They struggled mightily against Texas. Will that continue? And like I said in the interview there with Marler, I'm a little concerned that the narrative all week is Alabama struggles on the road. Alabama struggles on the road. And that's the emphasis, and they get that cleaned up, and they take care of business on the road. If I'm an Arkansas fan, that's what I worry about. But hell, I show up rowdy and get as loud as I can for this ball game because this is going on 2 years now where Alabama's struggling on the road in conference play and hell, against Texas again, out of conference. So you can be a real factor in this game. I don't care how good Bryce Young is. He has turned the ball over. He had multiple interceptions in the ULM game and in the first half and everything. So he's not flawless by any means. It's still a work in progress on offense. And again, that's, if KJ Jefferson's scoring in bunches, maybe Alabama starts pressing a little bit. It plays right into your hands, getting pressured. You force the issue. That's going to lead to turnovers. That's how they were defeated in College Station last year. I remember a key turnover Bryce Young had it was either in the end zone or on the goal line, and I remember A&M brought it out. I mean, that's what it takes to beat Alabama. Eliminate their scoring opportunities, turn the ball over. Let's kick it over to Saban on lack of offensive identity a couple games into the season and Bryce Young's continued growth in the offense.
How would you characterize the team's offensive identity after 4 games?
I think you build an identity over a season, and we're going to continue to try to do that so that we have balance and we feature the players that we have on our team so that they have the best opportunities to be successful. I think there's been times when we've done that extremely well, and there's times that we haven't, but I really can't. We made a lot of explosive plays in the last game, which we want to continue to be able to do, to utilize the skill players that we have and run the ball effectively when we need to. So we're still, building on that identity, but I think the players are making really good progress.
And Nick, just wanted to ask you about KJ Jefferson, just his size and how tough he is. If in coaching or in practice this week, are you really focusing on wrapping up and tackling, and just how dynamic of a threat is he, both as a passer and a runner?
Well, I mentioned before what a dynamic player that he is. Big, strong guy, hard to tackle, hard to sack, hard to get on the ground, can push the pile and run over people when he runs quarterback runs. Very physical, player. So all those things that you mentioned are certainly things that we want to emphasize this week. But you can't minimize the effectiveness of this guy as a passer. He is really good. He's got a strong arm, throws the deep ball well, and they make a lot of explosive plays because they run the ball extremely well. They have really good play action passes, but he executes it both ways very well.
Bryce obviously had a big year for you guys last year, but where have you seen him improve the most from year one as a starter to now?
Well, I think the big thing is he's got a lot of new people around him, and I think that it creates tremendous value for him, as he did in the last game, when he makes it work with the players that we have now. And I think each week we've done a little bit better job of that, and I think to have continued growth in that area is important for him and for us.
Now, final matchup I want to preview here, Texas A&M at Ole Miss. Man, predictions all over the place. I've been listening to anything and everything I can get on this game. No idea. Kind of like last week, Arkansas A&M. Could see this game going either way. It's kind of a toss-up. Mississippi State, of course, won last year at Texas A&M. It's going to be a crazy environment, a veteran team against a young team, a team with confidence against a team trying to prove itself in the SEC. I think this is a game Mike Leach has to have. I think it's bad if he loses it. And Mississippi State, not trying to overreact to one loss against old LSU, but that was your big test and you flunked it. This is like flushing the season down the toilet if you can't beat an A&M team that can't score. Look at these numbers for A&M. 14th in the SEC in scoring, 10th in passing efficiency, 10th in rushing, 11th in touchdowns scored, while Mississippi State, you're number 8 in scoring defense, number 6 in pass efficiency defense, number 8 rush defense. This is going to have to be the Devon Awchain game again. I mean, he was just heroic against Arkansas. Can he keep that up? Number 2 in the SEC in all-purpose yards, 156 per game. You have to limit the possessions of Mike Leach's offense. Brian Kelly calls it a triple option, just slightly different. That's basically what it is. And that's how you attack. You limit their possessions, time of possession. Not a key stat in football these days, but I think in this type of ball game it will be, because A&M has just not shown the ability that they can trade scores. First one to 30 wins this ball game. And the under might be the strongest play this week in this ball game. It might be the strongest play of the week here in this ball game, because both these defenses, one is veteran, one is just loaded with talent, playing out of their minds. That is probably A&M's biggest advantage in this one. Great pass defense. This is the best secondary I think Jimbo Fisher has ever had there in College Station, going up against a Mississippi State receiving corps, which, hey, we praised to no end on this show, but they flunked big time at LSU. Is that gonna? If that happens again, they're gonna get crushed in this ball game. I really do think. A&M, number 4 scoring defense in the SEC, number 3 in passing efficiency, number 4 in touchdowns allowed, while Mississippi State offense, 6th in scoring, 6th in passing efficiency, and dead last in rushing. So maybe Mike Leach, 4th and short. Don't run it up the gut time and time. You get them once. I got LSU the first time because I don't think anyone saw that coming. A&M will be ready for that. But let's kick it over to Jimbo Fisher, because this is interesting, something to think about here. You go up against Arkansas, which is, I don't want to call them ground and pound, because KJ Jefferson, I believe he's number 3 in the SEC in pass efficiency. They've got some receivers. They've been great through the air. But the identity of Arkansas, they want to take away your soul on the ground game. They want to just pound you. It's complete opposite this week. Mike Leach wants to nickel and dime you and get you to lull to sleep, hit you over the top, obviously throw it 50, 60 times a game. How strange is it to go from one offense, preparing for one, to the other, and how to have more success on defense against Mike Leach's offense that really killed you in the second half last year. And as Jimbo Fisher says, hey, we've had moments here where we've been able to go up and down the field on teams. They have the ability and the talent to get that done against this Mississippi State defense, but saying that and doing that, 2 different things.
How much different defensively is this going to be, going from Arkansas and the run heavy and their quarterback to now this scheming?
It's different. I mean, it's a different kind of spread. One's much more throwing, one was much more running and throwing, you know what I'm saying? And what they're doing. So it is different. But the quarterback, Rodgers, can still run and scramble. He's a good athlete.
And then when you look at last year compared to this year, do you feel like with the secondary, you guys are better equipped at slowing down this team than maybe you were last year?
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, the year before we did a really good job. Last year we didn't do a good job. And we're gonna have to. I think you have to have multiple looks. You have to do different things. And I think you'll have to make plays on the ball and be able to cover. So hopefully we will be, and hopefully we'll be able to put the pressure on at times when we need to. Guys can rush.
And then that first offensive drive that you guys had coming out of the half, is that what this offense can look like when?
Yes, we can look like we can, and it at times look like it all the time. We can go up and down the field, just relax and execute. Plays are there, things are there, and what we're doing is exactly right. I mean, we got many plays, routes, things. There's nothing in our offense we don't have.
Second row, Ole?
Just enough execution right now. Got to execute better.
And one more thing I wanted to say, Jimbo Fisher, he's got a lot to prove in this game. After losing to Mike Leach at Mississippi State the last time out, it'll be interesting to see how motivated the Aggies are to, get payback here away from home, establish the order of things in the SEC West in their mind. A&M fans, clearly, you got to believe A&M fans believe that they are on another level from Mississippi State. But here, you got to prove it as an underdog, and apparently as a growing underdog. Again, the spread favors Mississippi State. The advanced analytics, for what that's worth, favor Mississippi State. What's that mean? I don't know, but I think it means we're going to get one hell of a ball game in Starkville is what I think. So let's kick it over next to Mississippi State's coach, Mike Leach, of course. Thoughts on A&M's defense? Very interesting matchup again with their secondary against Mississippi State's receivers. That could be the key to the game. On having one of the best return games, also can't be overlooked in a game like this that should be very, very competitive. Going to come down to explosive plays. Who makes the plays could come in the return game, no doubt. Facing DJ Durkin, once again, Durkin certainly got the better of it in the Egg Bowl last season. Of course, Durkin was at Ole Miss, but you could make the case, as I think back, it was rainy, it was cold, obviously Thanksgiving, a lot of dropped touchdowns by Mississippi State in that ball game could have changed things, but this is a chess match that DJ Durkin won. He knows how to have success against Mike Leach, so that's something to consider. And I love this. I mean, Mike Leach is just the best, isn't he? So that is something to consider heading into this ball game.
Mike, A&M been incredibly good defensively this year. I think they give up like 11 points per game or something. What sticks out to you the most about them defensively?
Just they're they're big lanky guys and they run well. Once they see the ball, they do a good job chasing the ball. Really, I mean they're athletic and they run to the ball.
Going off of that, your punt and kick return game so far is one of the best in the country. What have you seen from that unit as a whole, as well as from Tulu, Xavier, and those guys in particular?
I think we're improving. I think we're getting better. I think we've done a pretty good job blocking it. If we, for the most part, we just got to be disciplined on our blocks, things like that. I think those two guys are explosive. I also think they're kind of emerging and getting better and better.
Went up against DJ Durkin last year at Ole Miss. He's at A&M this year. What's that defense look like on film through the first few games at A&M?
Just pretty similar. They a lot of zone. They like a lot of zone. They'll just change the front some, and then it's very fundamental, which I think is a strength. I think that's a strength when they're very fundamental and they've decided what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So,
and one more thing, man, Mike Leach is he can deliver a gem when he wants to. He's got one for us here. Mike Leach, he's praised Kyle Field to no end. He knows that place well from his days at Texas Tech, and he still got high praises here for Texas A&M fans. It kind of reminds me of my relationship with them Aggies sometimes.
Coach, when you were at Tech, you and A&M had some legendary games there, and there's a lot of people there obviously that remember your time there. What are your thoughts maybe about that fan base and just kind of about that program historically?
A&M? Well, it's a great place to play. The fans are fantastic because the fans are truly committed. I mean, as far as around the country, I mean, for the A&M fans are truly committed. So it's always great to play in front of people that, where they feel like it's very important. What's happening is very important to them. And, of course, Kyle Field's a great place to play and always an exciting place to play. And it's just a great challenge to go play at Texas A&M. And, of course, they hated us for years. I never felt like I really hated them. I'm sure they hated me, but which was fine because, your liking me is not mutually exclusive to me liking you. If anything, maybe it helps. And then, no, it was. They were great games, and it was fun. And it was fun to play Texas A&M, and what a great setting to play. And yeah, no, they were intense games, and it was always intense.
All right, so how great was that? That's a great way, I think, to end the show. We got some terrific guests lined up on the next episode, preview some more games, and we'll get to the other ones. And before you know it, Cousin Shade will be back on the line to break down these matchups. What a weekend we got in the SEC. Cannot wait for it. But that is going to do it for this episode of the show. We'll catch you on the next one.